Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend David Graziano, who is a professor, and he wrote a book, and we're going to get into that. But first, I'm going to do the housekeeping. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Always need more volunteers to share their dreams. You can get a coffee mug, tote bag, t-shirt. Direct donations always accepted. I'm running out of whiskey. If you want me to keep playing video games, you need to buy me some whiskey. Also, I've currently 11 books of historical dream literature now published, available on Amazon. Oh, I'm going to do the thing. Why not? Ayo. Look at this beast. Look at this 450 something pages. The Psychology of Dreams from 1920 by William Walsh. That's enough of that. Also yesterday, finally just published the 14-hour, no kidding, audiobook version. Had to split it into two. Unfortunately, I wanted it all in one, but they YouTube has a processing limit of 12 hours. And I just lost our guest. That's okay. This is the show's introduction. He had some business to do. Oh, he's got his own book. I should have said. I am so disorganized. I should have asked, hey, do you want to have your book ready? My bad, but I'm glad you thought of it, because so that's enough out of me. That's the housekeeping. Smash that like button. You know what this is. So I'm going to have David mostly introduce himself. I know we talked a little bit beforehand. Your new book is Toward Happy and Fulfilled. TowardHappyAndFulfilled.com is the website, and it is Professor Graz 33 Shortcuts to Living Your Best Life. Tell me about yourself a little bit and your book. What's up?
Okay, I'm a guy that I have a very varied background. I don't really refer to my experience as a career. That would be ascribing too much importance to it. I'd say it's a collection of experiences. I finished an engineering degree at Villanova, got my MBA at Harvard. Charged out in the world to beat the business world, and then I spent about 20 years figuring out that big companies were not the thing for me. It only took me 20 years to figure that out.
Same here, yeah.
And from there, I started consulting on my own and getting involved in some private investments and that sort of thing. And then at some point, fate intervenes, and I got married late, which is the whole story in itself. And we had, a child late in our 40s, and I wound up through a mutual agreement and circumstances. I wound up being kind of on the early wave of house husbands, being primary, caregiver to our daughter, and frankly, kind of resenting it at times, and not really what I had envisioned, and so forth, and then when I got involved in some different things, I got very involved in the community, started coaching baseball, and then ultimately, realizing how much I enjoyed the teaching aspect of coaching, I got into teaching. And I started teaching as an adjunct professor of business at Seton Hall University. And somewhere along the way, I started in my classes. I started trying to give the students something more than just the course curriculum. And I would weave in stories. It struck me that a lot of the stuff that I was teaching was good theory and important stuff for them to know, but wasn't necessarily how business really worked, and how it's really practiced. And so I would weave in these personal stories of triumph and defeat, most of them in the vein of don't do as I did, in terms of operating in business as well as managing your career. And then I would often also include stories of what to do, like, as maybe my wife did with a more successful career. And there were a lot of other things, not just career related, but other things that were just in terms of personal growth. I'm a person that's probably struggled in ways that are probably common to a lot of people. And I've always been a seeker and tried to, learn from these things and grow in different ways and avail myself to different, teachings, ways of thinking, and I've been a seeker. And so I, kind of poured all this out into my classes, and that was the stuff that the students really responded, to the most, and they enjoyed it and appreciated it. I would always get reviews at the end of the semester how much they enjoyed that, and so and I had a regular routine of it. I made sure to include all of these lessons throughout the semester, and then last year, shut in with COVID, I found myself looking for something to do, a new challenge, and I thought about this body of, I'll call it wisdom, or body of knowledge, or whatever, that I'd been sharing with the students. And our daughter, who's now 21 and a senior in college, it occurred to me I've never really shared all this stuff with her, and maybe I should memorialize it, and maybe there's a book there. And so I kind of wrote it with that inspiration to pass it along to her, but more generalized to a general population. And the more I got into it, I realized that it's not just something for young people, but also people at all stages. People that are looking to make changes in their life, maybe go off in a new direction, and maybe older people that are looking for fresh perspectives. They've experienced a lot of the same things, but my shortcuts. It's basically one chapter is per shortcut, and a lot of them are things that you've heard of before, like life is hard, or life is not fair, those kinds of things. Although I state them differently, but I have different angles on these things, and I've kind of updated them. There's another chapter on family, and we've all heard that nothing more important than family. I was raised with that too.
And nothing more aggravating sometimes, or it goes hand in hand.
Right. And but the theme of my chapter is you get to choose your own family.
For sure.
Because how do you define family? If you've got that was based on the old nuclear family, which really doesn't exist anymore. And there's a lot of mixed families, and where do you draw the lines around your family? Sure. And on the other hand, if you've got a very narrow family tree, then you basically have no family. So
you're going to have to build your own. Yeah.
So should you feel poor because you don't because you don't have much family, not by your own choosing? And on the other hand, if your there's circumstances where family has been either destructive or dysfunctional or whatever, and it's only more self-destructive to keep trying to fit yourself into a situation that's not hasn't been productive for you. So
for sure.
Anyway, I take a different. It's just an example. I take a different tack on a lot of these things, and I have some new concepts in there too that I've never seen before, and mix in a lot of. I guess there's a lot of personal stories, and there's also a lot of stories that I've mixed in that are famous people, historical people, to illustrate points. And
that's always a great way to do it. Yeah. This is good. Yeah. Like, so you're doing something that we were talking a minute ago that'll be all cut out of this full episode, but I would like to eventually get to a point where I think I've thought about certain concepts long enough to crystallize them into something I can share succinctly, which is always a big problem for me, but that I believe are useful, and share them with people. There's a great, I don't know if you're familiar much with Erickson's stages of development. We get to a certain age where there's generativity versus stagnation, and we either just fade away and die out. We're all going to die, but it's more of a death of the soul in terms of you're not, or you can give of yourself to generate. That generativity is it's not just creating new ideas, but helping plant seeds in other people to grow things you've learned and that are beneficial to them. That's a great way to do it.
Well, as Bob Dylan said, he not busy being born is busy dying.
Right? Yeah. And you can always reinvent yourself. And there's things that it'd be nice if you didn't have to wait 30 years to figure something out. If somebody could just tell you, hey, pay attention to this, and what if you consider it in this form? And they go bing, and it's like now their life is better because of it.
Well, and that's the point of my whole book is we talked about you talk about wish I knew then what I know now, and so why not pass this information, this wisdom to younger people? And there's no doubt that you gain more from having lived through these things. But if you at least gotten some a heads up on what might be ahead, and it's I call it kind of a shortcut to wisdom.
And it doesn't mean people won't experience the negative things, but they'll understand what they're in while it's happening. Like, oh, I recognize this.
Better prepared for it.
Yeah, that's it. Because you're going to go through some hard times, but if you kind of understand what's happening, you can ride those. Right. I love analogies. It's like. You're giving someone the oars for the boat. They don't just have to ride the rapids. They can kind of steer a little bit around the worst rocks. There's going to be rapids, but you don't have to capsize. Let me show you how.
Right.
Well, I want to make sure people know. Say it again, and this will be in the links in the description below. It is towardhappyandfulfilled.com. He's got the book there. I'll probably try and grab a screenshot of that with both of us. I should wait. I'll get mine too. I'll try and put this as the see, mine's backwards, but. That's because whenever I say raise my right hand, I have to see it as a mirror on my screen, or it drives me nuts. So that's a little behind the scenes for people. Let's leave that there. I wish you had a shelf to put that on there too. But that's okay. So what are we here for? We're doing a dream interpretation. Our friend David's got one for us. So as per my usual process, I'm just going to shut up and listen. He's going to tell us the dream, and we're going to try and figure it out together. So I think I'm ready when you are.
Good. So I actually had this one yesterday morning, and I've been through some of this before and enjoy the process. And I always found that when I knew that I was going to be talking about a dream, that's when they pop up.
They do, yeah.
just in time. And so this was a dream. It actually involves a recurring theme that I'll get into, but it starts out where I'm at some sort of a baseball showcase. It's meant to show off young baseball players, and by background, when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to be, was a Major League Baseball player. So I think that's where that theme comes in. And I don't know what to expect in this thing. I don't know when I'm going to be, when I'm going to be doing what. But I kind of know that this thing has 2 hours to run, like from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I don't know when I'm scheduled and where I'm supposed to be. But I'm excited to be there. It seems very chaotic to me. Like I said, I have no expectations, not knowing where to be. And I'm also excited to see some, players that I've heard about, and I know that I'm not in their league at all. And I'm wondering if I'm, of the caliber even to be at this thing. One of the, and I guess one of the overriding things is, so I start, snooping around and looking for people that I, might know or know of, and also looking for instructions on where I'm supposed to be when. And so an hour goes by, and it gets to be about noon, and and I find out somehow that I'm on next. I'm supposed to be in such and such a room, and for my hour of display. So now I go to a dressing room and I start getting myself prepared. And this is something that is kind of counterintuitive, but what am I doing? Just getting myself prepared now, like getting dressed and getting my equipment together and so forth. And as I'm looking for my gear, I'm wondering whether I should wear this shirt, that shirt. I try this one on, I try that one on, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm wasting all kinds of time. And I'm starting to panic that I'm missing my opportunity. And but it seems like the more I get flustered, and the more I get concerned about this, the further and further I get away from being able to move forward. And this is one of the things that is a recurring dream for me is when I know that I've got some sort of a time crunch, like having to catch a plane or something like that, and everything I do gets me further and further away from being able to get there, and that's what's happening here. But in this case, I actually do get there, and but now it's about 12:30. I've missed about half my time, and that's pretty much the conclusion of it. I guess one of the things that from when I've explored these things in the past, I know one of the things to think about is what were you feeling? What was your mood, or what feelings did you have? And I guess I'd sum it up in some panic, some I don't know, inadequacy. Why can't I move forward? Why am I not getting there? And the chaos that I mentioned, chaotic environment. I'm feeling chaotic internally.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
That's good enough for the description. So that's why I do this as a multi-part process, because there's always the phrase I've heard, the dream as related. So here's kind of the story, the sequence of events. Then my specialty, I suppose, and the part that I don't know if most people skip over or not, but is the deep dive, where we go back through and kind of step by step, real chronologically, what happened. And so I don't want you to stress out over giving me everything all at once. We're going to get it. We're going to get whatever's there, and more things than you thought, of course, in the process. So this is regarding, trying to be thorough in describing emotions. More will occur to you as we go. So we just jump into the go as they say, go back to the beginning. Vizzini said from Princess Bride. Love that movie. So you're in. What was the first thing you remember of being in a physical environment? Are you sitting in the stands of a baseball stadium?
No, it's the physical thing is kind of weird, actually. It's like a 2-level building, and I get the sense that there's a whole bunch of rooms across. There's maybe there's 20 rooms across the first floor and 20 rooms across the upper floor, with these sessions, these whether it's training or showcase going on in these rooms. They're kind of like appointments.
Okay.
So that's the and it's nothing fancy, just like an industrial building or something.
That's what I was going to ask too. Is the kind of nature of the building? You said industrial, like corporate office style.
No, something
industrial. You said
almost more. I don't know if you say. Yeah, I should probably say commercial. And maybe even more rustic or wouldn't quite say rural, but something that's kind of rustic and. I don't know, like it could be an old warehouse but it doesn't even seem that substantial.
Okay. And trying to see the picture of it in my own head in terms of, so there are some large indoor spaces where they have, it's not exactly rooms as much as divider walls that don't even go up to the entire ceiling. Is that kind of what it was? This
probably. I don't know it that specifically.
Didn't have a strong sense of that. Fair enough. Right. Sometimes these visual images mean something. Sometimes they don't. That's why we go through it. But that is very interesting too. So the nature of the structure, you decide to, or your brain shows you as the setting, as the context for what you're about to experience. So imagine you're in this type of place, and you're there. And when were you alone in a waiting room, sitting down? Were you surrounded by other people? Were you in a line waiting to get in? What was your sense of where you were and what you were doing when you kind of pop in?
Well, that's a good question. I was alone. I didn't know anybody there. I mean, I didn't, except that I might know of some players. I wasn't with anyone, and actually, that is that's a very interesting point, because that's my sense of my life as well. I mean, my upbringing, I was often on my own.
Gotcha. So the dream is saying, imagine you're in this type of place, and as usual, you are handling this independently.
I'm fending for myself.
Other people might have had a different experience, right. And my sister was with me because she always helps me with my major life decisions. I go to her for counsel. So that's why the sister shows up in the dream. But no, you are independent, I would say. Alone is a good way to put it too. There's no one to rely on or second opinion.
That's right. And in fact, my mother passed away when I was, I was 25, but she was kind of incapacitated from the time I was about 13 or so. She had Parkinson's. And
that's rough to watch.
My dad, and my dad was he was kind of I don't know, remote. He if anything, he threw himself into his work more, and was out of the house a lot with that, and I was the youngest, so I was left fending for myself. I became very independent, as a result of this, and but I think it's a common experience for me to feel like I'm on my own, and
for sure. And without getting too explicitly Freudian about it, I mean, a lot of these early, he was right when he said a lot of our early childhood experiences set strong habits and patterns throughout the rest of our life. If this is how we learn to cope with certain situations, we replicate that because it's what we understand. It's how we don't know any other way very often. It's very consistent, I would say, with your lived experience that this shows up in the dream. Okay, this is who I am in this. But it also it stands out as the dream saying, remember, this is how you think about these type of situations. Is kind of the meta narrative in that.
And
knowing.
Yes, and that is, and that's my tendency too. It's like my experience has been, I'm the only one I can rely on, and then I tend to want to do everything for myself and not ask for help.
That resonates with me very strongly. I love my independence, and I hate it. I wish I could rely on people, and I don't know how. There's very much a lot of that going on with me too, and I would say that might be the strongest type of thing in there that's where my brain went with it, that idea of not knowing how to ask for help, but not even just because we can grasp the principle, yeah, you should ask for help when you need it. Okay, how do I know when I need it? How do I know I'm not burdening someone with something I really should be able to do myself? It's not their problem. It's all these layers, but then accepting help. What form should it take most effectively? I mean, there's so many questions that pop to mind just in like trying to process that simple concept of ask for help when you need it. Easier said than done.
Yeah, actually, that's a chapter of mine as well in the book. Is
nice.
Is you can't do it all on your own, and this is something I've learned on my own. That don't be afraid to ask for help, and some people may turn you down, but a lot of people are more than happy to help, and maybe a lot of people that you wouldn't never even imagine. And anyway, I close each chapter with a quote. Some of them well known, some of them not, but it's the John Lennon. I get by with a little help from my friends.
Yeah, very much. There's a reason things like that resonate so well and become so popular with people. That's one thing the Beatles were great at, is finding those resonance. There was a video I just posted on Twitter recently, which was, everyone should see this and just really watch it and don't even try to understand it, is what I posted. It's a black square under which a speaker is sitting. They sprinkle salt on it, so you have white salt on this black background. Then they play frequencies, and the salt makes shapes, patterns. Every frequency has its own pattern, and that has blown my mind for 10 years. That video's been around forever, but it's this whole idea that like the physical structure of the universe is like frequencies. I don't know how to describe it better. I'm not even going to try and describe it. It's just one of those things you have to experience, and you start seeing like that's what the universe is made of. What it means, I don't know. But when you see that, you're like, whoa, it's another level. Maybe I'm uniquely susceptible to having those moments, but I think everyone should check it out. But we were talking about your dream. Sorry. So, okay, back into my notes here.
So yes, I was by myself.
Yes.
To your last question, I was by yourself, and I guess I was mostly poking around. I think I was asking some people for guidance, like where should I go, or when might I be on, and I don't remember specifically how I found out, but I did ultimately find out where and when I'm supposed to be somewhere.
Yeah, and that's jumping slightly ahead. I want to get there, but in what order did the knowledge you were there by yourself occur related to the idea that you knew it was a specifically baseball showcase? Did one precede the other? The knowing of who you were, or what was happening around you?
I think what was happening around me. It was the baseball showcase first, and then I guess as I'm wandering around, I kind of realize I'm on my own.
Okay, because a lot of times there's what I've found through doing this over and over again is there's a connected series of thoughts, and kind of the order does make a difference. So if we were to start kind of stringing them together, your brain says, imagine you're in a warehouse and there's a baseball showcase of some kind. People's skills will be on display, and you're alone, and you don't know what to do, so you need to. Then your brain says, what would you do? You go and start asking questions, do some investigating. Do you remember that? Before I get there, because I jump ahead of myself too. What were the thoughts connected to the idea of the baseball showcase? Was there anything that led you to that understanding? Did you see equipment of a specific kind? Was it just a knowing, intuitive knowing?
No, it was just knowing it. It sort of started out on that basis, and I obviously, wanted to progress in my baseball, whatever you want to call it, my baseball endeavors. I wouldn't call it a career, but I wanted to progress in it, and this was a common, step. But
and that is interesting too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but I also had a nagging feeling that whether I didn't belong there or most of these guys were well beyond my ability.
There was some idea that you were among people of high skill and that yours may not reach their level. And when you had that kind of moment of realization and emotional connection at that, was it like, oh, well, of course, I mean, there's a lot of better people, or like, oh God, I'm going to embarrass myself? And anything come to your mind about that?
Maybe the embarrassment thing. I would say it does remind me of a feeling I had at Harvard. Where I found myself around all these. I guess I had always thought of myself as a pretty smart guy. In most groups, in high school and even college, I felt like I was, at the top of, near the top of the food chain mentally. And then I get there and I realize, oh boy, everybody here is pretty smart. I would have a nagging feeling sometimes that I probably had dreams there that someday they were going to tap me on the shoulder and say, we made a mistake here.
You don't really belong here, do you?
You really thought you belonged here? No.
Yeah. So those dreams are very powerful too. I mean, a lot of us have those dreams of being exposed as a fraud, and having deceived yourself into thinking you were even capable. Those are very powerful. And
aren't those the naked dreams?
They can be. Yeah. I mean, that's like the iconic, suddenly I'm exposed for whatever
right.
I am. And it's not, you're never going to find like naked pictures of me on the internet. It's not pretty under here. But I'm a fat man and, that kind of thing. And so that would be embarrassing to me in a lot of ways. And I would not want to experience that in a dream. It would be like, this is unpleasant. Beyond that. It is interesting too, and I wanted to just highlight. So I'm making little carrots as we go next to the points, and I like to prime people too to kind of consider going forward what has been said, of course, but the idea that it specifically relates back to, say, a childhood passion, that was something that you wanted to maybe develop skill in, but for one reason or another left behind. You gave it up, saying, like me, I am. As physically uncoordinated as they go. I get enough about me, but I get a very weird thing where if I watch a car pass at a certain speed, it jumps. I have this weird visual tracking thing. So hitting a baseball flying at me, never good at sports. Hitting catching a pass and hitting a basket, I can't judge. Not the most physically coordinated guy. And with the visual issues. So for me, there was never entertained any hope of a sports career. But to relate it back to you, sorry. So something about the way your mind wanted to conceptualize this was, not only are you there in a specific kind of environment, but it wants you to remember what it was like to have a childhood aspiration that you let go of for one reason or another. It's that, like, it could have very well been any other kind of event. It could have been,
sure, you
were there to promote your book and you thought there were other authors that were better, but it's something about that baseball idea, going back to that childhood experience of, so just to prime that a little bit, I probably could have said it more succinctly. I don't know if people can hear, the wind is crazy out there. I got a little canopy set up and it's blowing around. I got it anchored with rocks, but I don't even, no, I'm just a nervous type sometimes. So you started looking for, no, let me back that up a little bit too. You had a feeling of not knowing what to expect, not knowing what was expected of you is right. Kind of, so there was this, we get encapsulated as a performance anxiety type of thing, but not only that, like to the next level, not just I know what to do, I'm afraid I can do it poorly, I don't even know where to start. And so your process appears to be, let's ask some questions, let's look for someone who knows what's going on, where am I supposed to be, what's happening here. Do you remember the process of seeking that information? Like, who did you talk to? Any visual images come to mind? You spoke to a specific woman, a guy at a desk?
I don't remember. No, I think it was more that I was snooping around. I was looking around.
You did say snooping around, yeah.
Yeah, and I was looking for some sort of posting, of a schedule and of and assignments, some sort of assignment posting somewhere on a bulletin board or something. I was looking for that kind of thing. And I don't really know. How I found out. I don't have a recollection of that. I just all of a sudden I realized that I'm supposed to be on at noon, and I guess I knew where to go, but I realized I better get myself prepared. And I think there's something crazy about the idea of that, especially for me. I'm very much a preparation guy. I like to be prepared before I do something. And
me too.
and so the idea that I'm completely ill prepared, and not only that, but I need to start preparing at the time when I'm supposed to be starting to do something is crazy. That's very antithetical to me. So
yeah,
that's kind of striking to me.
I feel you there pretty strongly. That resonates with me too. The idea of if you're at the event where you are expected to perform, that is not the time to start getting ready. That's a very specific kind of experience. It is interesting too that you didn't find persons and ask them and receive instruction. You very much did it on your own. So this idea of you are alone and you're going to figure it out on your own. And you did. It was this, and it's interesting that you kind of more than once said snooping. So you kind of, that has its own connotation to it. And I don't want to label that in any particular way, but it is suggests surreptitious. It's looking for answers covertly, but not with a malicious overtone or anything. It's just like the idea you don't want even someone to see you looking for answers because
you
can do it privately.
I think it's more of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to feel like I look like I fit in. I don't want to look like some rube that has no clue about any of this.
For sure. Yeah. I
want to look in control, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I knew exactly what I was doing. I meant to trip on that crack. I was dancing. That's an Ellen DeGeneres comedy bit. Like, but then it is also interesting that the dream said the mere act of seeking was sufficient to grant that information. And it didn't even show you how. You didn't find a visual representation of a schedule. You didn't pick up a brochure off the countertop. It was kind of a seek and ye shall find. Your brain just said, and that's interesting too, as much as there's iconography of being unprepared and feeling inadequate and lots of different stuff, this moment of the dream is saying you don't even know how you do it sometimes, but just the act of looking will be successful. It just gets a gimme. It gives it to you. It says, of course you figured it out. You always do. That kind of thing. It doesn't even have to give you a representation of it. It says, yeah, you decided to know and now you know. I'd say that's a powerful icon. Yeah, for sure. That's because I try and give people a balanced view of things too. It's like we all have performance anxiety and stuff. That may be the overarching theme of the dream. We haven't gotten there yet, but it might be. But I don't think that's always only thing. It's a lot about how we approach those things and your brain saying, look at your process. And not even from a judgmental point of view. Just here it is. Let me show you something, some coherent thought. Now you can evaluate it, which is I'd say the benefit in going back and looking at dreams is connecting these dots. But I'm rambling as I do. What was I looking at here? Oh, I got too many notes. So it was around about that time that you had the sudden realization, or the knowledge was imparted to you that the event was supposed to take about 2 hours, or where did that knowing of the time frame come?
Yeah, for some reason I knew that the general time frame of this whole showcase was 2 hours,
and that was almost from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for some reason I knew specifically it was 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., which I don't know if that represents anything, but that's interesting to me. Yeah. that it was so specific, but not that I would be on for all that time. It was more like there were appointments during this period, these periods.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting way to look at it too. So your concept of this thing was it is a time bounded event,
Absolutely, yeah.
which has two aspects to it. It's like it won't last forever, so you don't have to worry about being, say, eternally embarrassed. This isn't the rest of your life. It's a very limited, but it's also a time crunch, a pressure. There is a definite beginning and end to this, and whatever's got to be done has got to be done during that time.
If you miss the train, you miss the train.
You miss the train, yeah, for sure. So that lights a fire under you, but it also gives a definite end to the discomfort of whatever you may experience in the process of it. So that's very, very much two ways to look at that. I was going through my notes as I wrote them, so things may be out of order. They usually are. And it was in this seeking that you found what you were supposed to do, and that also included which room to go to.
Right.
Okay. But the seeking itself seemed like it took about an hour of your time, so half the time was eaten up by the seeking process.
But I guess I knew that I wasn't going to be on for 2 hours. It was so I wasn't panicked at the beginning. I knew that there was I knew there was going to be some waiting in this whole thing, and I guess I had a feeling that since I didn't know that I was supposed to be on, I probably wasn't supposed to be on yet. My feeling was more that I was looking around. I was looking around for my assignment, but I was also looking to see, some of the other players and see if there's anyone I knew and that sort of thing. So there was sort of a feeling out social aspect of it, but also the I don't know, it's not vocational, but the goal part of this thing. That I was there for a purpose as well.
For sure, but you, even in that seeking process, you don't remember having specific interactions with people. It was more distant observation of, well, what's everyone else doing? What are the
yes.
In a way, I mean, because you use the word feeling out social norms, social expectations.
Yes, and I think that is a common old theme for me. It was especially being self-reliant. I think I learned a lot by, I paid a lot of attention to my environment, and just like at Harvard, there were a lot of people who were, much more polished, came from, some of them had accomplished some things, and knew how to dress, for business, and I just absorbed and try to figure out the norms and what I needed to do.
It's a great way to do it. I mean, and a very functional strategy is just pay attention to what's going on around you. Who appears to be successful? How did they do it? Can I imitate that successfully?
Yeah.
Great way to do it. So there is that. And I would say that is important too, from the aspect of you were not unaware that there were other people there. You were not actively ignoring them. You actually ran yourself also through that kind of mental process. Well, part of your seeking information, part of your trying to understand what to do, what is expected of you, is to pay attention to other people and what they're doing in that same environment, and compare yourself or help align your choices based on what's happening there. Very, very cool. And then I wrote down, so there was this, you kind of started the dream and you told me your initial impressions, and and we're kind of deep down in the, well, we're a little further along than no, we already talked about that. Okay. My chicken scratch. I write so fast I can't read it. We already talked about some of that stuff. That's good. So it was about noon. You realized about 1 hour had been. So there's something your mind wanted you to see, with the idea of half of the entire experience was looking for answers, or trying to orient yourself. And it's very interesting, these, as I say to a lot of people, if something was absent, it wouldn't mean anything. The fact that it was there and it was known and it was a feature of the dream itself is, imagine you've got a 2-hour window. 2 is a very easy number, very easily divided in half. And you can say, well, 1/2 of the entire process is just orienting yourself. So there's something there. Don't know what it means, but I think that's probably a significant feature. And then the other half is actually then now dedicated to the task at hand, so to speak. Like, okay, now that I figured out what I need to do, the other half of the puzzle, the other half of the experience is doing the job. Did you have a moment? Something occurred to you? What's going on?
A couple things.
Yeah, please.
I'm not trying to be a nonstop shill for my book, but
please promote the hell out of that.
But it has been very, it's a current project. I mean, I just did it in the past year, and so it's very much top of mind, and the topics are top of mind, for me. So the one thing about that's starting to occur to me about the time frame, and as you say, the divisible time, the 2 hours, and I think it's also interesting that it's 11 to 1. There's a division there, between morning and afternoon.
I was getting there, yeah.
And as you say, that there's definitely a division in terms of the theme of what's going on in the dream. And I've got a chapter called "Don't Live Someone Else's Life," and don't fall prey to other people's expectations or wishes for you, and etc. And there's a quote in there that I guess it goes back to Confucius. It was popularized in current or more recent times by Bernard Malamute in the Natural. In the movie, Glenn Close says this line to the naturalist. She says, "I believe we live 2 lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one." And so the point is that the first one, we think that we're sort of immortal and the whole world is out there for us. We can do it all, and it's sort of never going to end, and we can experience everything, and that's when you have sort of the luxury of making mistakes or going off in directions that may not be your own. And then the other one, when you realize you only have one, is when you get a little bit more in touch with your mortality, and you realize that time really is finite, and that damn it, I might as well live the life that I want for myself, and so that's when you get more focused on what's really important for you, and really live out your dreams, or live the life that you really choose for yourself. And so in a way, the morning here could be that first life, and the clicking over to the noon hour may be the realization for me that it's time to do what I really want to do, which in the dream and in real life was baseball.
For sure, and then that's what I was. I kind of jumped in, excited utterance there. In terms of the morning and noon division into, say, afternoon, and that's iconic of a lot of things. Of half the day, a day, a lifetime, possibly in metaphors, is you pass that point where the sun is no longer rising. Now it is setting. That's noon. Noon is the iconic dividing line, and that can be childhood and adulthood. It can be passing from inexperience into experience. The things you didn't know in the morning, you got to figure it out by the afternoon. There's so many different iconic ways to go with that. And the idea that you brought it around to your book of that, not just shilling, but a genuine, I saw it, a genuine connection. You're like, this makes sense to me in that aspect of, from, it's specifically related to that quote. That's probably the first thing that popped in your head. I'm like, oh, that's a quote from my book. Yeah. I think that was the moment. Oh, I'm getting sweat in my eyes. It's warmer in here than I thought. That's okay. No, but this idea that, so in the context of the dream, in this setting, your mind is now saying you've gone through the necessary morning time of the dream. And you didn't, as you were saying, you didn't feel any panic or urgency at that time to accomplish anything. You knew you hadn't, you knew you weren't on stage yet. You had time.
That fits very closely again with the quote and what that first life is about.
Definitely.
Or not about. There's no urgency. There's no panic. There's no.
But then there was, and this is what I wrote down very, very much at the end, that there was panic, urgency, and chaos feeling in that second half. I think we could look at it from the idea of that's a very reasonable response to realizing, say, half your life is gone, half of your anticipated life expectancy. There's almost and I hate to use the phrase midlife crisis, but we all have a midlife reevaluation. Were my choices made for the right reasons? Did I handle these situations successfully? Is there anything I want to do differently now that I have the benefit of hindsight and I still have time to do something different? I'm not on my deathbed. I'm just kind of crossing that halfway point into something else. And I would say anyone that doesn't have a midlife reevaluation is either absolutely confident they did everything perfect and there was no reason to second guess it, or they're just not paying attention and they're missing an opportunity. I was going somewhere with that. I do this all the time. I just ramble. Sorry. But that's a great icon to have in the dream too. And now imagine you're in this second half and now there's, and I would say it's more of like in this dream, you could have walked out at any time. You could have said, I don't want to feel stressed. I don't want this experience at all. I'm just going to leave. The moment you realized you were going to have to perform, you could have bailed on it. And if that's what we were talking earlier about, dreams are wish fulfillment. Some of them are. If that was the strongest desire in your heart, it probably would have shown up in the dream in that form. It would have been like, screw this. I don't want to deal with it. I don't have to. I can walk away. But something about you wanted to understand that experience in a certain way, so it put you through it, so to speak. It said, really look at this. Consider this full picture. And then you had the experience of finding the room. Any specific relationship to where you appeared at the beginning of the dream and where the room of preparation occurred to you? It was way at the end of the other hall. It was on a different level of the building. You said it was like a 2-story building and there were multiple rooms.
Mm-hmm. I don't.
It occurs to you or it doesn't? Yeah.
No, I don't have any sense of where you talk about like the where, I don't know. I'll call it like a changing room or some place where I was getting prepared.
That's what I'm kind of saying, quote unquote, room of preparation, whatever, for whatever reason.
Yeah. I don't have any sense of where that was,
or how you got there necessarily. Yeah. I wanted to ask at the very least, because it could have been like you might have had another moment and said, yeah, I remember I had to walk upstairs. I started on the ground floor and now I'm on the second level. Levels could have played, but there was no experience of that. So maybe its absence is actually interesting too, is that there's a pretty distinct lack of movement through physical space. Like some of our dreams show us very clearly, I walked from here down a path. I can tell you the flowers that were there, and I get to this, dock by the seaside where there's chalk on it. That goes back to episode like 13, I think. And he was able to, draw me the pattern he saw in his dreams. Fantastic. But for you, it's very much the opposite. There's a very vague sense of the physical space. I don't know if that means anything to you. It's puzzling to me. It may mean nothing. It may just mean your brain said it's not important. Don't worry about it. But sometimes the absence of something means something. I don't know. I'm not going to dwell on it, but you can let that percolate.
Maybe it's a sense of I have no idea how I got here. You know,
that could be it. That could be it. That you were completely disoriented in physical space, of like you don't know how you got here. The idea that occurred to you is you could be reaching to try and help me because I'm puzzled, but it may also be true, and it may also be unimportant. The absence may just say the physical space isn't as important as, say, maybe your mental space,
right? In
some ways.
Yeah, I'll tell you another. There was another theme from the book that that has been actually it's probably the strongest theme of the book. So somebody said this one chapter is worth the cover price on its own, and it's very relevant for this situation. It's called Paris or Vienna, and it's a story of. I read this one time, and I could never find it again. But this woman reads a story, and this woman is a mother of an autistic child, and she reads a story about a woman who has always dreamed about going to Paris. That's her dream place, and she fantasizes that everything is wonderful in Paris, and she should be there, and so forth. So she saves her money. She looks forward to the day that she can go to Paris. She buys her ticket. She gets on the plane and gets strapped in. They're taking off, and the pilot announces that the flight is going to Vienna. And so she's crushed. She can't believe what happened here. You know, Did they change the plane? Did I get on the wrong gate? But for whatever reason, she's going to Vienna, and so she's crestfallen. How will she ever get to Paris? And she'll miss out. And so she arrives in Vienna, and it's spring, and the weather's beautiful. There's music playing everywhere, and children singing, and birds, and music, and she just falls in love with Vienna. She can't believe the beauty in Vienna, and she doesn't know what Paris was all about, but she can't imagine anything more beautiful than this. And so, upon reading this, the woman reading the story, breaks down crying, and she realizes that it's very much parallels her own experience with her child. Because everybody hopes for an unchallenged child, with no health conditions, but she can't imagine, anything more loving than her child, or more rewarding when her child, breaks through, and learns new things and so forth. And so she can't. So she relates very much to the story, and I get very emotional talking about this myself.
For sure,
because I relate to it, and it goes back to what, as I mentioned, where I became the house husband, and it wasn't what I had envisioned for myself, and I had this Paris in mind that was I'd be running some company that might actually do something good and be successful at as a company, and I wound up in a different place, and all these wonderful things had gone on for me. I met wonderful people in town, made some great new friends, getting involved in things. I discovered coaching, I discovered the teaching. And another thing was that, I realized that, being around for my daughter's upbringing, and, being right on the front lines and experiencing things with her, was more rewarding than anything I ever had done in business. And so, I realized, this was my Vienna. The fact is that, when you look around, I think most people don't really wind up in their Paris. They wind up in something a little different. And and when that happens, the key to happiness is to realize all of the wonderful things that are in Vienna, and appreciate them. And like I said, I think until I read the story and I was ready to hear the message, those things were around me, but I didn't really appreciate them until I had this context. And so it's I think it's a very powerful chapter, and
For sure.
and a very powerful life. I don't know. It was a powerful life experience for me to hear this message, and I became instantly more happy with myself and with life, and I appreciated the things around me much more. And it was just a matter of perspective. And so
For sure.
and so I guess I've gotten to a point where I wish I had followed different paths in starting out. I probably would have been happier as an entrepreneur. I definitely would have been happier if I did something sports related. I could have coached. I could have gone into the sports business area. And there's other things that that I could have done, but that's not the path that I went. And I am happy with where I am now, and I also do feel like I've still got the opportunity to do things, and I've got some luxuries of time and good health, and we have enough resources. We could do things. I could start a business. I could buy a business. I could get involved in a nonprofit. There's a lot of things I could do yet, and I'm trying to I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, and that story has a strong connection back to the baseball theme in the very beginning. Here's something you were at that time in your life absolutely convinced would be the one thing that would make you the most happy. If I could just play baseball for the rest of my life. And looking back on that, saying, I can't imagine what my life would be like if I did follow that path. It's been so different that it's just the concept of it is like I can't even imagine it, so to speak. Yeah. And that that's also the passing from noon into the morning into the afternoon transitional period too, is the ability to look back over that dividing line and say, compare where you were before. And when you talk about, a bunch of things popped into my head of like the idea of happy accidents, or forced changes that you thought were a disaster at the time, or anticipating it looked like it was going to be a disaster, and afterwards you're like, again, I can't imagine it having gone any other way. This is perfect. This is exactly where I wanted to be, or it turned out better than I could have hoped. Reminds me of an old Chinese story I heard, and I always get it wrong in terms of, I always tell it differently every time because I can't remember how it goes, but it's like a Chinese farmer, and his horse delivers a foal, and he's got a brand new horse, and his neighbor comes over and says, you've got 2 horses. That's fantastic. And the farmer says, perhaps. Well, then the foal kicks his young son in the leg and breaks his son's leg, and the neighbor comes over and says, oh, that's a tragedy. He's got a broken leg. And the farmer says, perhaps. And and then the army recruiter comes through, and they're in gang pressing healthy young men into the army to take them off to war, and they pass over the son because he's got a broken leg, and the neighbor comes over and says to the farmer, wow, what a stroke of luck. And the farmer says, perhaps. Because it's all these reversals of fortune, and you never really know how it's going to end up. I mean, you can tell that story 100 ways, and you can end it a million different ways. But it's just the idea of, that uncertainty of the future, and things that look like it's a terrible tragedy or accident. Is it? I don't know. I haven't seen how it turns out yet. I don't know the end of the story. That's what I was thinking about with your story.
I actually believe that these accidents or these coincidences are around us all the time.
Oh yeah,
and it's a question of whether we recognize them or not. I'm a person that I always run into people. I feel like I always run into people that I know, in places that I would never imagine.
Yeah.
And I think that's, partly is I'm curious, and I actually look at my surroundings. I observe a lot. And then the other thing is that that people who are within certain circles, they tend to go to the same places.
Yeah.
If I were to run into somebody at Yankee Stadium, or if I were to run into somebody at a great restaurant in New York or something, I shouldn't be surprised, because the people that I've known are probably likely to be going to the same kinds of places, and then it's just a matter of whether you're paying attention. And just like the Paris Vienna story, I might have been around other stories that might have told a similar kind of had a similar kind of effect, but I wasn't ready to hear them until I read that one.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing too, is our ability to accurately, to sit still and listen, but also to accurately perceive the message and make use of it at the right time. There was another concept I was thinking of there too, which is, and another thing, is random Twitter stuff. I breeze through it. I'm always looking for people expressing things like, I've thought that myself, or I've never thought of it in that way. I love those export. Anyway, they said something about like people who think they receive special messages from the universe. And my first thought was, we're getting constant messages from the universe, from God, whatever you want to call it. We just have no ability to perceive 99% of it and understand what it means or put it to any use. So I like those kind of, yes, I don't hear the voice of God telling me to do specific things. That's leaning towards psychosis. But I do try to pay attention to, it's like finding opportunities. If you're not looking, you're not going to see it. And if you aren't ready to act, you're not going to take advantage of it. There's all kinds of things that need to, and when the stars align, we were talking about astrology earlier, that's what I consider magic. That's like when I lean into the whole, I'm a dream wizard type of thing. There's a specific concept I have of wizardry and magic in the metaphorical sense, and I think it's real as far as that kind of stuff can be, considered real metaphysically. But that's where we went on a long tangent. I mean, it's all good material, but I do want to give you a good interpretation. So, and we're really close to the kind of the fade out, so to speak. So you find the room, and in there was, I think you'd said something about equipment, and you had to sort equipment, and you were trying on different shirts, is kind of how you described it.
Yeah, I'm not actually in fact, in the dream, I don't really get into the let's say my session or whatever. I think it fades out. I think when I'm in, let's say, the changing room or the prep room, and I'm getting my clothes on and making sure I've got my equipment, and it's like I put this T-shirt on. And I, step back and look at it, and no, this isn't right, and then I'm, trying something else on, and that's pretty much where, and there was something else about, I don't know, there was something else about the bat. I don't know, like that it was. My bat, I was like covering it up in paper or something like that, and then
I know that's probably a very vague impression that just came to you. I know you mentioned equipment.
I was very caught up in my underwear, so to speak, in trying to prepare here.
Yeah. And when you say covered in paper, the impression of was it writing paper? Was it paper mache? Was it wrapping paper? You were going to give it as a gift?
More like wrapping paper. Not gift paper, but more like plain
brown package wrapping.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That's it. So when you said you never actually got to the performance, so this is first thing popped into my head. The encapsulation of the whole thing is process. Look at your process. The performance is what comes after the preparedness process. So the dream is like you've reached the end of your thought about this subject. You've conceived of the whole thing in the way you wanted to see it or the way you wanted to review it. And it's all about this preparatory process of getting ready to do something. Not the doing of the thing is something different.
Yeah, you know what? I realized that. So I killed a half hour doing all this prep and being caught up in all this nonsense. And my sense is that it's 12:30 and now I'm ready to go in for my performance. And so I don't know, maybe this was I guess progress for me, because when I've had this theme before in past dreams, I was I was clear that I was going to miss whatever miss the plane or miss the whatever the ride or the whatever the time crunch was. I was missing the ball game, let's say.
Yeah.
And in this one, I was ready to go. I still had time. I still had a half hour, and I was ready to go on. And that's where it faded out. But at least I was going to, get in the game. I was going to get in the game.
Yeah. You didn't run out of time. Time didn't expire on you. It did eat a lot of time. There is a kind of quarters. I mean, speaking of like a baseball metaphor, there's or sports in general. There was by halftime, in a way, you had figured out what was going on and you were ready to get your head in the game. But then it was the third quarter before you were actually ready to perform, and then we never actually saw that part. So there's something of you eating the majority of your time in preparation. It could be, and I don't know if this resonates with you, this review of you're asking yourself the question, maybe, do I spend too much time thinking about what I want to do, what I'm supposed to do, what's the right thing to do, and not enough time just experiencing? Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does, and I think too that it struck me that I'm I don't know if you'd say I was a late bloomer in certain ways. I think I was late to becoming a little bit mature as an adult. I think I was late doing a lot of things, and yeah, maybe caught up in non-productive things, before that, and so maybe this is kind of representative of that. There's some of that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and of course, not being critical about it at all. Sometimes our brain, like people had an experience of something violent in a dream. They did something violent and it was horrifying to them. And they're like, does that mean I want to do it in real life? No. But it's showing you this representation of a certain type of thing. You're experiencing an emotion about it because you're like, you want to consider that. So this isn't even if we nailed that down as the meaning of the entire dream, this is about your process and you're wondering if you spend too much time in process versus performance. That doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. It just means that's something you're considering, that even that's part of your process, is to analyze your process on a meta level and look at it and say, do I want to do things differently? Maybe you don't. Maybe this works for you and that's perfectly healthy. But at least you're aware of your process so you can now choose. Do I want to try something different or not? That's hopefully what these dream interpretations bring to people is that self-reflecting on the process that's been shown to them in the dream, and at least identifying the right question to then think about while you're awake. I try not to give people answers like, here's what you're supposed to do. That's I'm not as I've said before, not receiving messages from the Almighty to pass along to you specifically. Although metaphysically, maybe I am, but not specifically. And I try not to give direct, you should do this type of advice. I was going somewhere with all that. What do you think?
No, I would say that yes, I've been guilty of overthinking things, and
me too. Yeah.
And I guess that's maybe that's just what I'm comfortable with. But but then there's time for action too.
It's true, yeah. And there is that transitional period too, from once you seem to be very comfortable in the thinking phase. There's no panic anxiety, but this preparing to act, that's when things get squirrely. That's when you got to put theory into practice. I have that same experience myself too. And you're trying on different shirts. I think that's a great metaphor too of like, how am I going to present myself to other people? And there's this you're anticipating being evaluated as a part of this. So that knowledge came to you as part of the framework from the very beginning of the dream. Is imagine you're in this place to be observed, evaluated, to perform, and you may not measure up, and the anxiety didn't start until you started to take action towards that goal. So there may be something to say there about your process in terms of it's very comfortable to just theorize, but you start putting it into practice, you start second guessing yourself a little bit. Guilty, but it's me.
Well, another thing that occurs to me is the fact that I did mention earlier on about as one of the aspects of fitting in at Harvard was, for me was, looking around at how people dressed. I mean, when they were dressing up for an interview or something, and how that relates to what was in the dream about how I was going to present in a t-shirt, and maybe part of the message is don't be so worried about your presentation as opposed to your performance is really what
and then to have that
is really what's going to
then to have the actual tool for the job, so to speak, be wrapped in a kind of packing paper. I'm not sure what to make of that. And you can, free associate or whatnot, but there's something, it's like, it's a bat. It wasn't a ball, wasn't a glove. Maybe that's important. Maybe it's not.
No, it's an offensive object, right? I mean,
that's the thing you do the hitting with.
It's meant to be offensive, and it almost strikes me as a sense that my tools have been kept under wraps, or I've been held back, or I've been hindered by circumstances or something like that. It almost strikes me as something like that.
That is a good possibility too. It's also you don't have an impression of having wrapped the bat yourself. Like, you didn't put it in the paper and set it aside. It was in this environment, this place that was designated for you by external circumstances. This is the room you've been assigned. You have a variety of ways to present yourself, but your tools are not prepared for you. It was still put away in a sense. It was wrapped up. It wasn't ready to use at that moment. You were going to have to choose to unwrap it or take it with you and use it wrapped. Or there's also something about the plain paper, like the type of it was wrapped in, lined writing paper. This might say, something about your book and how it relates to your baseball aspirations. If it had been gift wrapping paper, like happy balloon print, birthday party style or Christmas style, like it was a gift that had been left for you. These would all say different things, but this is kind of plain, nondescript brown wrapping paper.
It was almost like it was disguised. It was almost like the bat was disguised or something,
God, you got that feeling. Yeah, that it wasn't very obviously a bat.
As I think about it.
Yeah.
As I think about it, the fact that it was this brown wrapping paper, it's like it was meant to disguise what it was really intended for, or something like that.
There could be something there about a hesitancy to use available tools, or maybe not even that. Maybe tools that are not obvious because they're concealed and they're there for you. They're in the environment. You can use it if you want to, but you have to notice it in order to take advantage of it. That might fit with some of the other themes. The tool not being ready to use is also seems strong to me. It's something.
Now, I guess my sense is that this was my bat. This was not one that was there for me, left for me to use. So, I mean, maybe it's the kind of thing where I don't recognize the tools I have, my own natural abilities or whatever, that keeping them under wraps or something like that.
Could be, or also if that's the case, it wasn't a bat left for you, so someone else did not conceal it. Maybe you concealed it yourself, and it might be part of not showing other people your tools. Like it's very obviously a bat, but it's put away, so to speak. You brought it with you, but it was in an icon for transportation, for shipping, for plane wrapper, like packing, something along those lines. And it might have been more related to other people not seeing it or having it not be on display for other people to see in that form. Something there. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. I love those connections though too. And then, did you settle on a particular shirt or mode of dress?
I think so. I think I did.
Do you remember what it was? It was a white polo, baseball jersey.
The only thing I can envision was sort of a plain blue T-shirt.
Okay, something very simple. You're just like, also very interesting. It wasn't a suit and tie. It wasn't a baseball jersey and cleats. There was something else there. Are you very much just I think you're wearing a T-shirt today with a sweater or jacket over it. You're kind of a T-shirt and jeans kind of guy. It's pretty simple in terms of dress. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That might be. How did you feel about wearing that shirt in the dream? Any feeling of confidence along with it, or?
Yeah, no, I felt like that. This is the right thing for this.
Very very much ending on a note of just be yourself in a way. Just do what you do. You got this. I think that would probably that's what resonated most strongly with me.
I think that's actually a place I've gotten to in life. I think I used to be more concerned about these things, and and I'm now just I think more comfortable in wearing what I want to wear. And
for sure, yeah, and to have that, so you didn't feel like you had to choose a specific costume to represent yourself in a specific way. And that's all. So. Yeah. And that's all part of your process too. It seems like, when you're put in a position of having to get ready to perform, here's kind of the steps. It seems like you go through typically, and different things you experience along the way. And by the end of it, by the time it's by go time, you realize you're ready. You got this, and you can just be yourself, and it's going to work out just fine. I think that seems like I don't know. Does that seem like the arc of the dream to you? I can say
it does actually. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Well, that's where this process gets us. I mean, it just takes me making a whole lot of chicken scratch and talking too much, and we usually figure something out. I'm impressed with myself, he said humbly, but I want to make sure you feel satisfied with, were there specific elements, imagery, emotions that you experienced along the way that you want to put into context, or anything I left out, forgot to ask about?
No, I'm actually, I'm amazed at, some of the things that you forget, and then, or that I forget, and then you bring out, and I realize, oh yeah, it was a blue shirt. It was all simple, and no, I think I'm very comfortable with where we've gotten on this thing, and I think it is the right set of interpretations, and this, in terms of the context that I was thinking of them, I think I've kind of shared some of those. I know often a lot the whatever your topic, your dominant thinking, has been recently, shows up in these things, and I do think some of the issues from the book, because they're so current with me, and I'm still
for sure
evolving them and so forth.
That was like my very final thing I was going to get down to is, okay, now we've got this kind of narrative. meta narrative, why this dream a couple days ago before talking to me. I'm gonna just claim this one humbly and say I think you were considering presenting yourself on my show and talking about your book and the experiences and getting yourself prepared to do this interview, and this that might have been what kind of spurred this specific dream. I don't know. That was just my final thought on the whole thing. Is like,
I absolutely believe there are no mistakes in that regard, and that's exactly what, I think the mind is whatever we've got going on actively, but then it's processing other stuff in the background, and this is the stuff that comes out as you're processing, in the background, what's really going on in your head, and no, I think it was produced for this purpose.
And that's a weird synchronicity to like a kind of Ouroboros type of thing. You had a dream for us to talk about because you were anticipating coming on to talk about a dream, and we've just got this infinity loop of perfect alignment of the stars, so to speak. That's fantastic. These things are always fascinating. People think, what's my dream? I was at a warehouse and baseball and I don't know. And we got just an hour and a half episode out of it because these things are always fascinating. Yeah. And I just always hope that people feel, and number one, I just talk to folks out there for a minute to say, never worry, your dream is interesting. They're all freaky, weird, bizarre, awesome experiences. Don't worry, it doesn't seem like you remember a lot or don't have a lot to say. The process brings it out. Everyone feels nervous and unprepared to do this. I feel nervous and unprepared to do this, and I'm running the show. So you will never be more nervous and unprepared than I am. So never worry about that. But okay, I think the only thing we need to do is just take care of the housekeeping, let you get on about your day. And if you hang out for like 2 minutes afterwards, and we'll just say proper goodbyes. Let me bring up this stuff here one more time. I always forget to do the, hey, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. I got books for sale, yada, yada. Audiobook, 14 hours. The Psychology of Dreams, up on the website now. I need your viewable hours to get monetized. Let's do that thing. And I'm not going to do the whole housekeeping. Forget it. But I am going to say big thanks to our friend David Graziano. He's got his book. You want to hold it up again? We'll hold up our books one more time. Here we go. I got The Psychology of Dreams. He's got Toward Happy and Fulfilled.com. Professor Gratz's 33 Shortcuts to Living Your Best Life. And I've really appreciated having you here. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you. I've enjoyed the opportunity, but more than anything, I've enjoyed the opportunity to explore the dream. I haven't done that in a while, and that was very, I don't know, stimulating.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
I always enjoy it, and I'm very happy when my guests do too. I don't think I've had anyone say I was bored or you were useless, so that's always a nice experience for me too. Okay, I'm just gonna say to the audience out there, hey, thanks for listening. We'll do it again. Bye-bye.
Thanks.